The sky did not scream when it died. It went silent. That silence was the first warning humanity ignored. On the morning Earth ended, Elias Verne was standing on a coastal platform, watching cargo drones lift clean water from the sea. The ocean was calm. The air smelled of salt and steel. Somewhere behind him, children laughed as school transports hummed past. It felt like any other day. That was the cruelest part. The universe did not announce its hatred. It simply arrived. The sunlight dimmed without warning. Elias frowned and looked up. Clouds did not move like that. The shadow spread too fast, swallowing the sky in seconds. Birds froze midair, confused by the sudden dark. Then the shape appeared. Massive. Impossible. A structure so large it bent the light around it, like a wound in reality. Black metal layered with glowing lines drifted above the planet, silent and patient. Around the world, billions looked up together. No alarms sounded at first. No warning systems had prepared for something this vast. Military satellites went blind in the same moment. Communications stuttered. Then the first beam fell. It struck the Atlantic with no sound. The ocean vanished. Not boiled. Not burned. Gone. A perfect circle of nothing replaced miles of water, exposing the seabed for one terrible second before reality collapsed inward. A shockwave raced across the planet. That was when people started screaming. More ships appeared. Hundreds. Thousands. They formed a ring around Earth, cold and precise. Beams followed, one after another. Cities vanished. Mountains collapsed. Entire regions were erased as if they had never existed. Humanity's weapons fired back in panic. Missiles, lasers, railguns. None of it mattered. The beams did not slow. The ships did not respond. They were not fighting. They were cleaning. Dr. Hannah Solis was underground when the surface died. She was in a deep research vault beneath the Andes, monitoring neutrino signals when the ground shook so hard she was thrown against a wall. The lights flickered. Emergency systems screamed to life. Screens filled with static and then horror. Earth's surface burned blue and white. She understood the truth faster than most. This was not invasion. This was extermination. Within hours, the skies were empty again. The ships vanished as suddenly as they had come. Earth was left broken, scarred, and silent. The atmosphere burned for days. Oceans steamed. Forests turned to ash. Civilization ended not with a war, but with a shrug from the stars. The beings responsible never sent a message. Later, humanity would learn their name, the Karun Combine. An ancient coalition that measured time in millennia and species in numbers erased. To them, Earth was a resource world. Humanity was biological interference. They marked Earth as cleared. They never checked beyond it. Far from the dead planet, beyond Mars, beyond the grief, a freight pilot named Jonah Cade sat alone in his ship, drifting near the rings of Saturn. He had lost contact hours ago. Then fragments of emergency data finally reached him. Broken images, screaming signals, and one clear truth. Home was gone. Jonah replayed the footage until his hands stopped shaking. He watched continents disappear. He watched cities vanish in light. He watched people die without even knowing why. Something inside him hardened. Grief tried to break him. It failed. Across the solar system, millions of humans in orbiting stations, mining colonies, research outposts, and long-haul ships saw the same thing. They felt the same hollow pain. But they were alive. And alive meant unfinished. The survivors gathered slowly, cautiously, like wounded animals afraid of the dark. Messages spread through hidden channels. Coordinates were shared. Engineers, doctors, farmers, pilots, and soldiers met in places the enemy would never notice. Inside asteroids, behind gas-giant radiation belts, deep in shadow. They counted themselves. Just under 2 million. That was all that remained of humanity. The first years were brutal. Supplies ran out. Systems failed. People argued, cried, and died. Many wanted to give up. Some did. But others refused. Humans had never been the strongest species. They had never been the fastest. But they had always been stubborn. Dr. Hannah Solis became one of the anchors. She helped design closed ecosystems using scrap technology and alien physics theories no one had taken seriously before. Crops grew in rotating tunnels. Water was recycled endlessly. Children were born under artificial stars, learning early that survival was not a gift, it was a job. Jonah Cade became a leader without asking for it. He flew when others could not. He fixed ships that should not have flown again. When people talked about hiding forever, he asked a dangerous question. What happens when they come back? That question changed everything. Decades passed. Humanity adapted. They learned to live without a sky. They learned to fight hunger, fear, and despair with creativity and cooperation. They learned something else too, how invisible they had become. The enemy had sensors tuned for planets, fleets, empires. Not for ghosts. Then, one day, a mining crew cracked open something ancient inside an asteroid near Jupiter. Not human. Not natural. A broken Karun probe, lost during the purge. Its systems were damaged. Its data core still pulsed with alien code. Humanity studied it in silence. They did not understand it all. But they understood enough. The enemy had made a mistake far greater than leaving survivors. They had underestimated what humans do best when pushed to the edge. They adapt. They wait. And when the time comes, they rise. The galaxy believed humanity was extinct. It was about to learn how wrong it was. The galaxy moved on. Trade routes shifted. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and forgotten. In the archives of the Karun Combine, Earth was nothing more than a completed task, one line in a trillion-entry database marked resolved. No alarms. No follow-ups. That neglect became humanity's first weapon. In the darkness beyond Jupiter's radiation storms, the survivors built a new way of life. They stopped thinking like a planet-bound species. There was no sky to reclaim yet, no soil to return to. Space itself became their homeland. Every tunnel, every hull plate, every recycled breath carried meaning. Children born in those years learned to walk in low gravity before they learned to run. They learned silence before speech, caution before hope. But they also learned stories. Stories of oceans, rain, trees, and wind. Stories of a blue world stolen from them. Those stories kept something alive. Dr. Hannah Solis grew older, but her mind stayed sharp. She led a quiet revolution in biology and engineering. With limited resources, she pushed humanity to rethink everything: food, medicine, even aging. Human bodies adapted faster than expected. Bones grew denser. Muscles adjusted. Immune systems strengthened under constant exposure to recycled environments. Humanity was changing. Not by choice. By necessity. Jonah Cade watched it happen from the flight decks. He commanded no fleet, ruled no council, but when ships needed testing, he flew them. When routes needed scouting, he volunteered. He mapped hidden corridors through asteroid fields and radiation belts where no alien sensor would ever look. He called them blind paths. Using fragments of Karun technology, human engineers learned how alien sensors worked, and more importantly, what they ignored. The Karun scanned for power spikes, for organized fleets, for signatures that looked like empires. Humanity learned to look like debris. They spread out instead of clustering. Power systems ran below detection thresholds. Communications were carried physically, ship to ship, by pilots who memorized routes instead of broadcasting them. To the galaxy, humanity did not exist. Inside, something stronger was forming. A council emerged, not a government, but a coordination. Scientists, builders, farmers, pilots, and former soldiers sat together in rotating shifts. They argued loudly. They disagreed often. But they shared one belief: humanity would never beg again. The broken Karun probe became their teacher. It took 15 years to fully unlock its data core. 15 years of failure, burned circuits, and dead ends. Then one day, a young engineer named Tamsin Rao found the pattern. Karun technology was not based on brute force. It was based on prediction. Their ships did not react faster, they knew where threats would be. Humans smiled at that discovery. Prediction could be fooled. Human ships changed design philosophy overnight. Instead of perfect efficiency, they embraced chaos. Engines with variable outputs. Hulls that shifted shape slightly under stress. Flight paths that made no sense even to their own pilots until the last second. Karun systems hated unpredictability. The first true test came by accident. A Karun survey vessel passed near Saturn, its sensors sweeping lazily. Humanity froze. Ships powered down. Habitats dimmed. For 3 days, everyone held their breath. Then Jonah Cade did something reckless. He launched. His ship barely registered as a pebble. He drifted close enough to see the alien hull, smooth, ancient, confident. He recorded everything. Engine glow. Shield harmonics. Weapon cycling delays. Then he vanished into the blind paths. The Karun ship never noticed. That recording changed the future. Years later, humanity built its first true warship. It was nothing like the sleek alien vessels. It was asymmetrical, armored in layered composites scavenged from wrecks and asteroids. Its systems hummed with controlled instability. Its weapons were crude, but adaptable. They named it Resolve. The launch was quiet. No speeches. No cheers. Just silence and watching eyes. When Resolve jumped successfully using a modified alien drive, a sound spread through the habitat that had not been heard in decades. Laughter. Not relief. Not joy. Defiance. Training followed. Not mass armies, but small crews trained to think independently. Human doctrine shifted from domination to disruption. They would not fight the Karun the way the Karun expected. They would strike where it hurt least, at first. Supply lines. Communication relays. Automated refineries. Ghost attacks. A single drone sabotaged a relay station light years from Earth's remains. A cargo hub malfunctioned due to unknown errors. A navigation beacon began transmitting incorrect star maps. Small things. Unimportant things. Until they added up. Karun analysts noticed inefficiencies rising across sectors. They blamed software decay. Aging infrastructure. Minor species interference. No one considered humanity. Why would they? Dr. Hannah Solis died peacefully during this time. Her body was released into space, wrapped in the flag humanity had created for itself, a simple symbol of a broken circle slowly closing. Her work lived on in every human breath taken without Earth. Jonah Cade grew tired. His hair turned grey. His reflexes slowed. But his eyes stayed sharp. When younger pilots asked why he kept flying, he gave the same answer every time. Because someone has to remember why we're doing this. The Council finally named what they had become. They called themselves the Unforgotten. Not a nation. Not an empire. A memory with teeth. On the 50th anniversary of Earth's destruction, the Unforgotten gathered data from across Karun space. They saw patterns forming, stress fractures in a civilization too old to imagine true resistance. The Karun were strong, but rigid. Ancient, but complacent. Humanity had become something else entirely. Adaptive. Patient. Quietly furious. Jonah Cade stood on Resolve's bridge, staring at a hologram of a Karun core world, vast, defended, confident. He knew humanity was still outmatched. He knew millions could die if they miscalculated. But he also knew something the Karun did not. Humans did not need to win quickly. They only needed to endure. And when the galaxy finally noticed them again, it would be too late to stop what they had become. The first real strike was not loud. It did not burn a planet or shatter a fleet. It did not announce itself with glory or vengeance. That was the human way now, quiet, precise, and deeply personal. The Karun Combine noticed the problem when an entire sector went dark. Trade convoys failed to arrive. Automated refineries stopped responding. Navigation beacons contradicted each other, sending ships in slow, deadly spirals through empty space. At first, Karun administrators blamed decay. Their empire was old. Systems failed sometimes. Then a patrol ship vanished. No debris. No distress signal. Just absence. That was when the word anomaly appeared in reports. On the human side, the crew of the Resolve sat in silence as the recording played back. A Karun patrol vessel drifting helplessly, its engines dead, its weapons locked in safety loops it could not override. Human code had slipped inside like a whisper, using logic paths the Karun no longer questioned. Jonah Cade watched without smiling. "Take only the data," he said. "Leave them alive." Some of the younger crew hesitated. These were the beings who had erased Earth, who had killed billions without a word. Mercy felt wrong. Jonah shook his head. Fear spreads faster than death. They wiped the patrol ship's memory, stripped its logs, and vanished. The Karun crew woke hours later with no explanation, no enemy, and no answers. Only the knowledge that something had touched them, and let them go. That knowledge spread. Across the Combine, reports increased. Systems failed in ways that made no sense. Weapons powered down mid-cycle. Shields dropped for seconds at a time, just long enough to feel naked. Nothing catastrophic. Just unsettling. Karun culture did not understand this kind of threat. Their wars were decisive and overwhelming. Their enemies were crushed quickly or absorbed slowly. This was neither. This was harassment. The first emergency council in 3 centuries was called. They asked a question no Karun leader had asked in a very long time. Who is doing this to us? No one had an answer. Meanwhile, humanity refined its methods. Engineers learned how to piggyback on alien communications without being detected. Pilots memorized escape routes measured in milliseconds. Soldiers trained not to kill, but to disable. Not to conquer, but to unbalance. Humanity had learned something painful from Earth. Total war destroyed everything, including the future. They wanted the future back. A new generation had grown up by now. People who had never seen Earth, but who carried it like a scar passed down through blood and story. One of them was Leanne Ortiz, a tactical analyst barely 30 years old. She had never felt wind on her face. But she could see patterns where others saw chaos. She was the one who found the flaw. The Karun Combine relied on centralized command logic. Not one leader, but one philosophy. Decisions flowed downward in clean, predictable hierarchies. It had worked for thousands of years. Until humans showed up. Leanne proposed something radical. "We don't hit their ships," she said. "We hit their trust." The plan was dangerous. It required humans to imitate Karun signals, inject conflicting orders, and let paranoia do the rest. If discovered, it would expose everything. Jonah approved it anyway. The operation lasted 6 weeks. Karun fleets received orders that contradicted each other by fractions of a degree. Mining worlds were told to halt production due to phantom threats. Patrols were redirected to empty systems. No single error was obvious. Together, they were devastating. Efficiency dropped. Arguments broke out between command nodes. For the first time in known history, Karun forces began questioning their own data. That was when humanity struck openly. Resolve led a small task group into a lightly defended logistics hub near the edge of Combined space. Human ships did not form clean lines. They moved erratically, accelerating and decelerating in ways that confused targeting systems. Karun defenses fired too early, too late, too wrong. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, the hub was intact, but useless. Every system locked. Every control loop corrupted beyond quick repair. The human ships vanished without pursuit. This time, they left a message. Not a broadcast. Not words. A symbol. A broken circle, slowly closing. The Karun analysts stared at it in confusion. They searched their archives. Found nothing. But something about it unsettled them. It suggested incompletion. Return. Persistence. Something that did not end. Fear entered the Combine quietly. Worlds demanded more protection. Fleets were pulled back to defend core systems, leaving borders thin. Trade slowed. Resources tightened. The Empire had not shrunk, but it had stiffened. Exactly as Lian predicted. Jonah Cade did not live to see the next phase. During a deep-range reconnaissance mission, his ship took damage escaping a sensor net that had adapted faster than expected. He stayed behind to manually reroute power, buying time for the rest of his crew to escape. His final message was simple. Tell them we're still here. Humanity mourned him not with statues, but with action. His name was given to a new class of ships, fast, unpredictable, impossible to ignore. The unforgotten had crossed a line. They were no longer ghosts. They were a problem. And problems demanded solutions. Deep within the Karun Combine, a decision was made. Not public. Not announced. A task force was assembled, not to investigate an anomaly, but to hunt a species thought long dead. They traced faint echoes, patterns, absences, toward the ruins of Earth, toward the dark where humanity had learned to breathe. The galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten. Humans do not disappear quietly. They endure. They adapt. And when pushed far enough, they make the stars answer. The Karun Combine had hunted many species before. They had erased civilizations older than humanity, crushed empires that spanned dozens of systems, and absorbed cultures that once believed themselves eternal. But they had never hunted something they could not see. That uncertainty gnawed at them. The task force they assembled was unlike any before it. Not a conquering fleet, but a net, wide, layered, patient. Sensor arrays tuned to detect anomalies instead of power. Long-range observers seeded through dead systems. Silent watchers placed where nothing important was supposed to exist. They did not announce the hunt. They did not need to. The unforgotten felt it anyway. Lian Ortiz noticed first. Trade disruptions along blind paths. Radiation belts behaving strangely. Background noise shifting in subtle, unnatural ways. The Karun were learning. Slowly. Painfully. But learning. They're not chasing us, she told the council. They're closing the room. That changed everything. Humanity could hide forever. But hiding would not reclaim the future. It would only delay extinction. The council argued for weeks. Voices rose. Fears spilled out. For the first time in decades, the word Earth was spoken not as memory, but as question. What did humanity want? The answer came from the youngest among them. A girl named Myra Solis, granddaughter of Hannah, stood during an open forum. She was barely 20, born in orbit, educated in rotating classrooms. She had never seen a tree, but she knew its shape by heart. We don't want revenge, she said quietly. We want space to exist. The room fell silent. She continued. The Karun erase anything that might one day challenge them. That means us. And anyone else who grows too fast, thinks too freely. If we only fight for ourselves, this never ends. Lian understood immediately. If we make ourselves visible, she said, we stop being alone. The plan that followed was terrifying. Humanity would reveal itself, but not as a victim. Not as a conqueror. As proof. Resolve was long gone, but its successors were ready. Dozens of ships gathered near the edge of Karun-controlled space. They powered up fully, abandoning stealth for the first time in half a century. Engines burned bright. Shields flared openly. And they transmitted. Not to the Karun. To everyone else. The message was simple. Untranslated. Raw. Images of Earth before the fall. Children playing. Cities alive. Then the beams. The fire. The silence. Then images of humanity in the dark. Children born among stars. Farms grown in metal halls. Hands rebuilding what was broken. And finally, a statement. We were erased without warning. We survived without permission. We will not vanish again. The signal echoed across neutral space. The reaction was immediate. Species on the edges of the combine froze. Traders halted. Independent worlds panicked. Many had felt the quiet pressure of Karun expansion but never dared speak of it. Now they saw what resistance looked like, and that it was possible. The Karun responded within hours. Their task force struck. Not at a fleet. At a human habitat. The attack was swift and brutal. A mining asteroid cracked open, spilling atmosphere and lives into space. Hundreds died in minutes. The message was clear. Hide, or be erased properly this time. Humanity answered with fire. For the first time, a Karun warship was destroyed. Not disabled. Not sabotaged. Destroyed. Human ships swarmed it like insects, attacking from impossible angles. Weapons fired in bursts timed to confuse predictive systems. Boarding teams breached critical nodes and overloaded the alien power core. The explosion lit the void. Across the galaxy, sensors recorded it. Analysts stared at the data in disbelief. A Karun ship. Gone. The myth cracked. The battle that followed was chaos. Human ships did not hold ground. They struck and vanished, leaving traps and wreckage behind. Karun forces retaliated with overwhelming strength, but their blows landed on empty space. Still, the cost was high. Names were lost. Habitats evacuated. Entire blind paths burned. Humanity bled. But it did not break. Something else happened instead. Messages arrived. From species humanity had never met. From worlds long pressured into silence. From traders, refugees, and quiet rebels who had watched the combine grow unchecked. They did not offer fleets. They offered information. Supply routes. Weak points. Political fractures. Ancient grudges. The galaxy was paying attention now. The Karun leadership called the humans what they had never called any species before. A destabilizing force. That frightened them more than any enemy. Inside a hollowed asteroid called Haven, humanity prepared for what they knew was coming. This was no longer survival. This was no longer revenge. This was confrontation. Leanne Ortiz stood before a projection of Karun core space. She felt the weight of billions, dead and alive, pressing against her chest. Humanity had forced the galaxy to look. Now it had to endure what came next. They will come in numbers, she said. They will try to end this fast. Myra Solis nodded. Then we don't let it be fast. The final phase was ready. Humanity would not win by matching strength. They would win by changing the rules of existence itself. As Karun fleets mobilized across dozens of systems, confident that this annoyance would soon be crushed, they missed one critical detail. Humans had never been good at following rules. Especially not someone else's. And when the giants finally looked down at the species they thought they had erased, they realized too late. Humanity had grown teeth. The Karun combine came with certainty. Their fleets emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, thousands of ships moving as one, their hulls glowing with ancient power. This was how the combine ended problems. Overwhelming force. Clean removal. Finality. They believed this would be quick. Humanity watched from the dark. Leanne Ortiz stood inside Haven's command core, surrounded by projections that tracked enemy movement in real time. Every human heart felt the same pressure. This was not a raid. This was extinction aimed directly at them. Myra Solis closed her eyes for one breath. Begin phase final, she said. Space changed. Not visibly at first. The Karun fleet advanced, weapons charging, sensors sweeping. Their predictive systems ran millions of simulations, calculating every possible human response. Every simulation failed. Human ships did not meet them head-on. Instead, space itself began to misbehave. Gravity wells appeared where none should exist. Navigation points shifted by microscopic margins, just enough to break formation. Communication lag spiked unpredictably. The Karun tried to correct. That was the trap. Human engineers had not built stronger weapons. They had built conditions. Using decades of stolen knowledge and creative desperation, humanity had learned how to destabilize local spacetime fields temporarily. Not enough to destroy systems. Enough to make certainty impossible. Karun ships collided. Shields flared at the wrong moments. Weapons fired into empty void. The fleet that had never known disorder found itself fighting the universe. Human strike groups emerged from impossible angles. They did not aim for ships. They aimed for command logic. Boarding teams flooded control vessels, not to slaughter crews, but to expose truth. Data cores were cracked open and transmitted outward, records of erased worlds, sterilized systems, species reduced to footnotes. The galaxy watched in real time. Neutral worlds intercepted the flood. So did Karun client species. The myth of benevolent order shattered as centuries of quiet genocide spilled into the light. Inside the chaos, Myra Solis led the final broadcast. Her face appeared across every open channel humanity could reach. She did not shout. She did not threaten. "We are human," she said. "We were born on a small blue world you erased because it was convenient. We survived because we refused to accept that convenience decides who deserves to exist." Behind her, images of Earth played, not just its destruction, but its life. Oceans, forests, cities. Then images of humanity after, children in orbit, hands rebuilding, people refusing to vanish. "We are not asking for permission," Myra continued. "We are offering a choice." The Karun leadership attempted to cut the feed. They failed. "For the galaxy," she said, "this is the last time you pretend not to see what happens when one empire decides it owns the future." The words spread faster than fleets ever could. Species broke formation. Auxiliary forces hesitated. Some Karun-aligned worlds powered down defenses, not in rebellion, but in refusal. The Combine had ruled through inevitability. Humanity had shattered it. The battle did not end with annihilation. It ended with collapse. Karun command networks fragmented under the strain of contradiction. Orders conflicted. Authority dissolved. Ships retreated, not because they were destroyed, but because they no longer knew why they were fighting. When silence returned to the battlefield, space was littered with wreckage and drifting debris. Humanity was still standing. Barely. Haven burned. Dozens of ships were lost. Thousands of lives ended. But extinction had failed again. The galaxy changed that day. The Karun Combine did not vanish. Empires rarely do. But they withdrew. They consolidated. For the first time in their history, they negotiated. Not from mercy. From caution. Treaties followed. Borders were redrawn. Independent systems united under shared defense agreements. Humanity did not rule. They did not conquer. They forced balance. Myra Solis stood years later on a reconstructed station orbiting Earth's remains. Terraforming drones worked slowly below, coaxing life back into poisoned soil. It would take centuries. That was fine. Humanity was patient. A child floated beside her, pressing a hand against the glass. "Will it ever be like the stories?" he asked. Myra smiled softly. "Not the same. But it will be ours." The galaxy would tell stories about humans for generations. About a species that lost everything and refused to disappear. About ghosts who learned to fight without becoming monsters. About how creativity defeated certainty. About how resilience outlasted power. And whenever young civilizations asked what humans were truly like, the answer was always the same. "They are the ones who were erased," the storytellers would say, and came back so loudly that the universe had to make room. Humanity did not terrify the galaxy because of its weapons. It terrified the galaxy because it proved a truth no empire ever wanted to face. You cannot erase an idea. That refuses to die. And humanity was never finished.